Welcome to Rewinding Founders, where we talk to founders and entrepreneurs about the very early stages of their journey, openly and honestly, so everyone can see what it's actually like to start something new. Today, I'm joined by Karny Ilan. Karny is the founder of Feminai. Karny, so nice to meet you.
It's so nice to meet you too. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, I'm going to dive right in. And before you even tell us what you're doing now, I'd love to hear how you got started in entrepreneurship.
Wow. So I always dreamed of being a doctor and I was in medical school. And by my fifth year, it's a 6 year program. And my fifth year, I saw this Facebook commercial for an entrepreneurship course only for women. It's called We. And I was like, I'm bored. Medical school is on the same track. Maybe I should do something new. I should say I did not know what the word entrepreneurship meant. I had no idea what it means. I had nothing, no one in my family was in this field. So I just looked at it and I was like, it seems fun. Seems like a cool after school activity. So I just signed up. And that's where my journey, I guess, began.
That's wild. And how did you go to what you did from starting it out to where you are now?
Wow. So in the entrepreneurship course, I learned like all the basic vocabulary. I suddenly was exposed to this world. And then in the course, I met two other women that were also in that course, but they came from different backgrounds. Both of them were technological backgrounds. One is a biomedical engineer student, and the other was a data scientist student. And I shared with them this vision I had, and together we sort of made it work. And I think at no point did we decide, okay, we're becoming founders. We just were like, okay, this is cool. Let's start playing around with it. So we played around with it as if it was like an after school activity. It was what we did. We were at school and we were talking all the time on WhatsApp and we shared ideas and we ping ponged on things. And suddenly it started becoming real, like from time to time. It's like there was no point where we decided we're going for it. It just, we signed up for like student competitions and accelerators. And the more we won, with the more we advanced. And then there was one point where we were like, okay, it's either we're creating a company or not, but it took a while to get there.
Amazing. And when you decided to, okay, I'm going full in, was that a hard decision for you? Because it's quite different from being a doctor.
Definitely. So I will say this. When we decided to go full in, I was still a doctor. I was in my internship year at Sheba Medical Center. And it was the time to do it because we just finished an accelerator at the Technion, which is a technological institute. And we just won a lot of money. And we also won this grant that enabled us to open a company with no charge, do founders agreement, the incorporation documents, write a patent without charge. It was that time. And so we decided to do it, although I was still doing something else. I think what was hard about it is basically the lack of confidence we had. I think everyone kept calling us founders, but for ourselves, we were like, we're just three young women that are trying to make a vision we had come true. I don't know if we would call ourselves founders. And then every time someone tried to call us that, it was really weird for us. So I think going full in was just scary because we were like, we don't know what we're doing. Um,
Legit.
that was the thought. We were like, we don't know what we're doing, and we found ourselves sitting in this very fancy lawyer office signing all these documents, and technically we had no idea what we're signing. It's like no matter how much we tried to read on Google, we had no idea what we're signing. We opened a company, we signed like so many documents, and to us it meant nothing. Today I look back and I'm like, wow, we signed a lot of things. We did not know what we were signing, but yeah.
That's cool. Did they have any background, your co-founders, in companies and building anything?
So they had backgrounds in technology, both from serving in the army and also one of my co-founders worked at Microsoft for a few years. So they had a background in what they were doing, but not in building something. For the three of us, it was the first time we were building something. We did not even understand we were building something back then.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And why this idea? Like, what made you think, maybe we should push this one forward? Because it sounds like you had a lot of like thoughts and different things you did.
It's a good question. I think the three of us knew it has to be something in the medical field and it had to be something in women's health. And because I was the doctor of the group, it was quite intuitive that I would give the vision. I would give the pain point, and the three of us together will come up with a solution. And my family has a rich history of breast cancer, so it's something that was always in the back of my mind. And then it's also why I became a doctor. I wanted to be a breast surgeon and take out the tumors. So it sort of it made a lot of sense to deal with that area. And then I was doing the entrepreneurship course right when I was learning my surgical clerkship, which is when medical students are in the hospital only in the surgical ward. And we were taught a lot of things about the breast. And I think that's when I started thinking of the idea. And we actually didn't have that many different ideas. We focused on breast cancer right from the beginning.
Amazing. Is the idea you started with the idea you're going with now?
Surprisingly, yes.
Huh.
Um,
Okay.
we actually hadn't had a major pivot yet. I will say the technology we presented way back then, we mended the technology a bit and we made it more major and we added all sorts of layers to it. But the concept is still the same concept, surprisingly. But yeah,
Cool. That is like unique in the startup world.
I know, definitely.
Cool. Okay, so what's one thing that you found out in this journey about entrepreneurship in general that surprised you? Something that you didn't think would be this way.
Well, there's many things. I think the thing that most surprised me and that actually helped me the most to understand was at the beginning, it's like I didn't know what I was doing, and my co-founders didn't know what they were doing. And we were like, okay, we just need to find someone who knows what they're doing to guide us. And I think what surprised me is to understand there isn't that someone, there isn't an answer man or an answer woman that I can approach and would dictate what the equation should be to reach the goal we're aiming at. I think understanding that no one knows what they're doing was super surprising to us because the three of us came from like such technical professions where there's like a clear path to if you want to create something, you have to do ABC. So we kept looking for that person to tell us what to do. And realizing we can't find that person was super surprising to us. We understood that this field is like all about inventing something new. Nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. We talked to like these major entrepreneurs that raise so much money, and we talked to these major VCs. Nobody knows what they're doing. Some people have more experience, some can guess easily because they have a lot of knowledge in their background, but nobody really has the answer. So that for us was super surprising, I think.
Wow. It makes me think of, I once heard some entrepreneur talk about how in school, a lot of times when we learn, especially like maths, you get a question and the answer is already there. Like if you don't know how to solve it, you just need to ask someone. But this is so different. Like,
It's exactly the same. Yeah, I think we looked at it as a math equation at the beginning, and then we realized it isn't. Yep.
oh well, we're in this now.
Yep.
Cool. How did you like become good friends with your co-founders? Was it just a shared interest? Was it how did that
Wow, it's so funny because they always okay. I always say the same sentence when I ask this. I always say they were never my friends, um,
happen? Interesting.
and they always laugh at it. But it's actually the truth. When I met them, it was from the beginning a business relationship. We met and we talked only business. It's like basic things that you know about friends you create friendship with. I only found out recently. So now we're definitely friends and they're my best friends and they know everything about me and we spend all the time together, but it took a while to get there. We were only business at first and I think that really really helped me. I think not being friends really really made us reach where we are today because it enables a very very free communication path. Everyone feels very comfortable saying everything, criticizing everything. And also I think because the three of us came from such different backgrounds, there was no backlash between us because we had to have a very good trust relationship. It's like they have to trust my medical opinion because I'm the only medical expert on the team, and I have to trust their biomedical opinion because they're the only engineer on the team. It's like we had to really trust each other, and the minute each one of us had a very distinct role, it really enabled us to move forward.
Interesting. Were there any challenges in understanding like who makes which decisions?
That's a good question. I think no, I think not, because medically it was always, it's actually scary how how it was super obvious that each one of us had her own responsibility, because for each of us it made it a bit more scary, because like I wasn't gonna decide anything related to the technology. I have no background in technology. So I think for me it was super easy, but for my two co-founders it was scary because they were like, okay, the responsibility is on us. Just like medical opinions were all on me. I think the scary part came where I mean, we are very strong medically and technologically, but business wise, we had no experience. And I was named the CEO because it made a lot of sense that the vision and the medical would be the CEO, but I had no business experience whatsoever. And suddenly, what was funny to me is that both of them were like, yeah, you can make all the business decisions. And I'm like, I kept coming to them to consult with them. And they were like, why are you consulting with us? You should just decide. So for me, that was kind of weird to me because I had no business experience, and it was weird for me to have to make decisions about stuff I had no idea what I was doing in.
Amazing. That's so interesting. How were you feeling, like, confidence wise when you started actually going to these competition or accelerator or raising money?
I think what helped me is I was not aware of what I was doing. I was like so naive. I was looking at it as this like student project that I did not stop to think of whether I'm nervous. I treated it as if I'm going and lecturing. And I really, really liked teaching in the university and lecturing. So that's what I looked at it in the first time, and I just kept going. And it's so funny because, like, today, before I go on a call with an investor, I'm super nervous. But back then, I was not. And it's just because I was not understanding the ecosystem. I did not realize how much was weighing on this 40-minute Zoom call. Now I understand, and I'm way more nervous than I was before. It's actually funny. I wish I would think like before, but yeah, that's the
Interesting.
way
Do
it
you
is.
think there's a way to get your mind in that space again? Do you think it would actually be beneficial?
It's definitely beneficial. I think when you talk to anyone and when you pitch, if you pitch from a place of confidence and not like I'm begging you for money, it changed the atmosphere in the room like 100%. And that's sort of what I try to do now. I don't believe in chasing anyone for money or chasing anyone for advice. I believe that they should come to you. And it's all about what you radiate to the outside. You have to look confident. You have to seem like you're doing your own thing. Whether these people are going to join you or not, you're doing your own thing. They're welcome to join you and they're welcome not to, but you're not going to chase anyone. So I always try to get into that mindset. But sometimes if it's someone you're really eager to talk to or you really want them to join you, it's hard to stay in that mindset. Definitely.
That's amazing. Do you remember anything that was like crazy or weird or like out of the norm that you or your co-founders did in order to get a deal or an investment or like to get
I,
something you needed?
okay, so it's funny. I think in general, as an entrepreneur, we have to deal with like different time zones, right? It's like, and if you're waiting for a meeting with someone and they finally answer your like 10th email and they suggest a specific time, you're going to say yes to that time no matter what, because meetings sometimes just fall under the ground because you can't get that meeting. So it's like, if someone I need is setting a meeting, I'll take it. And then what happens is we end up taking meetings at the weirdest times and the weirdest locations. I was sitting outside a graveyard, like outside a cemetery, and I talked to an investor because I was like, I have to talk to this investor. And this is the only time they offered. So, like, that's what I did. And, like, I was at a wedding and I went out of the reception. I opened my laptop in my car and I did an investor meeting because I was like, that's the only time they can do it. And I wanted to meet with this investor. So we had meetings at really, really weird times. I think that's the weirdest thing we had to do up until now. And of course, I don't know if, like, I think for entrepreneurs, mingling sessions, all of these like networking events, I think for us, this was the weirdest thing ever to do. It's like you have to stand there. You're suddenly becoming a salesperson. You have to approach people you do not know and start telling them about yourself to get a meeting or to get them to take your like business card. I think those were really, really weird for us as well.
Wow. How did you approach that? Like, how, when you went to these events and you knew you wanted to get a meeting or someone's connection or anything like that, what was the mindset?
I think the most important thing, and that's actually hard to do, is to try to look at the RSVP list from before to see who's coming to the event or who is potentially coming. And then it's usually like lists of hundreds of people. But if you narrow down which personas you're looking for and you look at their photo from LinkedIn, if these people were not super photoshopped, you can actually recognize them. And then that also helps you because you know from advance you're talking to the right person. So we stalked a lot of people. The fact that our generation knows how to stalk people from Instagram and stuff, that really helped us. Um, so we definitely did a lot of intelligence work ahead of time. And then in the event, when we're together and I'm not alone, usually what happens is my two co-founders go and like track the lay of the land, and they like point out to me where the people I need to talk to are. If I'm alone, it's a bit more hard. And then I usually just try to be the most interesting person and try not to give them a pitch. I usually just try to talk about myself, me being a doctor, a woman, a young entrepreneur. I usually just try to get them enthusiastic about me and not necessarily about what I'm doing. That I think that really worked most for getting like that first meeting after those receptions. I will say this, these networking events are not that necessary in my opinion. I think if someone is super introvert and you don't like putting yourself out there, I think you'll be fine without it. I think each founder has to find a way to reach out to people, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think you have to be super extrovert to survive these events and really get good meetings from them, and it's not always the best case scenario.
Interesting. You think you can, what would it look like if you weren't able to do that at that time?
Definitely. I think what changed everything is social media and specifically LinkedIn. At the beginning as an entrepreneur, I really didn't understand LinkedIn. I mean, I knew I needed to have one. I just didn't understand why I needed to use it. And then the more I use it, the more I realize it's actually working for me. Because now that I have LinkedIn, it's actually, it almost makes these networking receptions not needed. Because if I post my journey on LinkedIn and VCs that are interested in my topic and our solution see it, they can track me ahead of time. And I get to have that first introduction that I would normally have at the reception through my LinkedIn profile. Because investors spend a lot of time on these LinkedIn profiles as well, and they want to track and they want to see your progress as an entrepreneur. So I think that really, really helps. And I think people that want to avoid going to these receptions can definitely get away by just having a very well held up LinkedIn profile or a website or a blog. Anything that enables people to get to know you from advanced.
Interesting. I feel like yes, but also the fact that you were able to do it is probably like that's amazing. Like the fact that you were just there and talking, and the fact that you had a whole plan with the co-founders, that's
Yeah, I know. It's like you have to get the lay of the land. It's like you have to conquer. It's like a war, sort of. You have to go in the battlefield, be prepared, know who your enemies are, know who you're trying to scope. Definitely.
oh wow. And how do you have a health tech startup? So
Yep.
how do you see that as being different from a more ordinary startup, a tech like software, whatever?
Cool. I think the main differences are in the beginning, actually, which is when usually a non-health tech startup, their goal is to get that MVP as fast as possible, and then they can actually approach customers super fast, and maybe they could reach their early stage investor when they already have that one design partner or one customer. That's as opposed to the health tech startups, where reaching that first design partner or that first customer is a matter of years, years and a lot of money. So you can't hope to reach that same stage. Basically, reaching that MVP is usually a process that takes a long time. For us, reaching the real MVP took us about a year. And then reaching that clinical trial and really creating a full validation of our idea is a 2 year process. So it takes time, as opposed to many of my friends that have startups in the like the SaaS and software areas, where validating their idea was a matter of weeks or months and not a matter of years. So I think that's the main differentiation. And then as a founder, you really have to understand that and create different milestones, and you have to present yourself differently to the investors and show them that the path might take longer, but you may get more rewarded at the end, because at the end, every woman has to get screened for breast cancer. So even if it takes me a longer time to get to the market, my market is much bigger than all of the fellow founders market combined. So it's a matter of how you present the startup, how you present the impact you're going to have. But it's definitely a challenge. Definitely.
Amazing. How did you get to know the circle of people that you're around now that are more founders, people who are entrepreneurs? Like, was that something that you happened to have from before, or is it like what's the word? Or is it like a group of people that you got to know throughout the journey?
That's super important, because that's something. So we knew no one. I did not know anyone. I did not know what the word founder was. I'm still not comfortable calling myself a founder. That's for me a weird title. I'm like, am I a founder? And I think I got to know people the more I attended these events. Like, there's many events for like founders meeting founders. There's pitch events where you come and pitch. And slowly I started meeting all sorts of founders. And the more you meet founders, the more you understand where these founders communicate. So today there's many Facebook group and WhatsApp groups and LinkedIn groups where WhatsApp communicate with each other. And it's like super developed. There's like WhatsApp groups for early stage founders, for health tech founders, for SaaS founders. So it's very like, it's even according to the verticals of the startup world. And today, yeah, I think it really helps me that, like, for instance, I have a question, I have this like thing I'm not sure about, and I can just ask all of these people that are, I will say this, they're not my friends. I won't go to coffee with them, but it's like business friends. And I have them like on speed dial. I have them on WhatsApp. I can just write a question. I have a group like with like tens of founders. I can write a question and I can get everybody's opinions like in an instant. And also, I will say this, many early stage investors usually invest in many companies. And then they open WhatsApp groups for all of the portfolio companies they invested in. And that really helped us. So for us, the founders I usually consult with are founders that my investor invested in as well. And we have like, and our investors always have these events for us where we can meet and talk, and they deliver all sorts of materials for us. So that really helped us, but we did not know any of these people 2 years ago. This is a completely different circle we had. And I think that's a big challenge for entrepreneurs. When you don't know anyone, it's very hard to advance. You have to know people, and it takes time to know them.
Amazing. And when you have these events, is that something that, as the CEO, you're the one representing, or is it something that all of you like to be included, like to go, and like how do you manage the time between you guys?
Wow, that's a really good question. So I think that's actually something that determines at what stage your startup is. Because at the beginning, every meeting, every Zoom meeting, every event, everything we would do together. It was like obvious. We're like, yeah, we're going together to everything. And it took us a very long time to understand it's a waste of time, because like my two co-founders should be sitting developing our MVP at this time. And then B, it's actually not only it's not helpful, but it's actually harmful. Actually, most of those meetings, introductory meetings, are much better one-on-one. You shouldn't have a team sitting with you. You shouldn't waste your team's time. And also, it's never good. It's never good to have three-on-one combination of a meeting, unless you're at an advanced stage with someone, with an investor, and he asks to meet your team. So nowadays, I meet alone. I go to all of these events alone. We never go together unless we're at an advanced stage and they ask to meet my team. I will say this, both of the investors we had, both of the VCs that are backing us up, one of them never met my co founders. They met them only after they invested the money, and the other met them only before we signed. So it's not something that's needed. And that's actually an advice I have for entrepreneurs. Don't take your fellow co-founders. Go alone. And I think that was my mistake at the beginning. I took them with me and I wasted their time, and it was just not needed at all.
Wow, I relate to that so much. I remember being like almost a year in, me and my co-founder, I wasn't the CEO, she was, and we had this conversation of like, okay, is it actually logical that I go to every event and everything with her as well, because I'm not working on actually building the thing?
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, maybe this is the time where we need to understand our time has value.
And by the way, it's funny, but the reason I brought him with me is because of this podcast I heard, which now, when I understand it, that podcast was not intended for someone as early stage as I was. I heard this podcast about a very, very big company, and they talked about how it's super important to bring with you someone to every meeting because that person can be objective from the side and hear you and then give you criticism and write down all the questions you were asked. And I saw a lot of logic in that. So I was like, okay, let's bring my two co founders. They will sit down, they won't talk a lot, they'll write down questions. But then now I look back and I'm like, okay, that's an advice to give when you raise your Series A or Series B. It's not an advice to give to someone who's an early stage founder raising their pre seed funding round who has no product yet. You should use your time to the best of it. So, yeah.
Wow. Amazing. I love that. Um, okay. What was one thing that happened on your journey, or as many things as you'd like, that you felt like this is a giant win? Like, I can't believe this just happened. But maybe someone from the side wouldn't even understand, like, what's the big deal?
Wow. It's funny you're saying this because up until, so we were published on this magazine lately, on this 30 under 30 list.
Woo!
And up until now, we didn't really share our journey with most of our close friends and family. But then when it got published, we suddenly had to share it. And the reason we did not share it is because we didn't feel that the people around us would understand. They wouldn't understand what's a big win for us, and they wouldn't understand what's a big lose to us. So for us, we just shared it with each other. So it's interesting that you put it that way. Um, I think the biggest wins at the beginning were like getting to hear people validating our idea. I think at the beginning, hearing someone that's like, "Wow, that's such a great idea," I think meant so much, and it could have been for like the simplest people, but them validating it or thinking it's a good idea was really, really meaningful to us. And then at the same on the same like concept, hearing someone diss our idea, even if it was someone that wasn't from the field, was really, really taking us down because we were like each negative critique we got really, really took us down because we were like maybe we're not on the right path. And I really, really remember this. At the beginning, we had the idea, and we were like, okay, they teach you that after you have an ideation phase, you have to go and validate the market. You have to go on a survey and ask. So we set meetings with many different physicians, and the first meeting we had was this with this very, very well-renowned physician in her field in Israel. And I was super anxious about that meeting because to me it was like she is the well-renowned physician in this field. She has to approve this concept. And we went on Zoom. I presented the idea, and after 2 minutes, she was like, "This idea sucks. This would not work." She was like, "This would not work. It's not useful. Think of something else." She was like, "I'm sorry to disappoint you. I like women entrepreneurs." That's what she said, but this would not work. There's no place for this on the market. And I remember this making me feel so sad. Like I would walk around with that feeling for like months and months and months just because that one person said that this is a really bad idea. And the reason I took it that bad is because I really looked up to that person. I was like, she's the key opinion leader of her field. It took me a while to understand that even the most well-renowned people are wrong, and that the whole goal of us as founders is to create something that is so new that the biggest expert in that field still don't understand that they need it. It's like as founders, we see something, we have to try to find something that we see as relevant before everybody else understands it's relevant. That's why we're innovative. And it took me a long time to understand that. And actually, a week ago, I got this like full circle moment because I met with her. I came to do a lecture to students as an entrepreneur, and she was the lecturer before me. And she saw me and she was like, "Wow, I recognize you." And then I told you, "Yeah, you you told us our idea was not good." And she was like, "Yeah, I remember saying that. I was wrong." I was like, "Yep." um,
Really? Like, she
yeah,
took it back.
yeah, she took it back. She took it back. And she says she always gives us as an example when she talks to people about how you can always be wrong and it's hard to anticipate what would be the next big thing, even if you're the expert in the field.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah, so I
amazing.
think that really took us back.
Well, how do you, I guess personally, but also as a team, regulate the highs and lows of building something like this? Because I'm assuming that wins are amazing, and then you get someone saying no that you were really expecting to say yes, and it's like, and a lot of ups and downs.
Wow. Okay, these are all really good questions because it's stuff I
Thank you.
really learned along the way. I think at the beginning, we were three co-founders, right? So at the beginning, you go to all of the meetings together and everyone is caught up on the agenda. Everybody knows who we're meeting, when we're meeting them, what we want to happen. At some point, somehow, and it's a natural process. I can't pinpoint to when it happened. The CEO suddenly raises in the pedestal. And suddenly, because I go to meetings alone, a lot of things that are happening, my co-founders don't necessarily know that they're happening at the same time. And what happens is that there's sort of a filter, right? I know all of the information, but they don't necessarily know all of the information. And I think that's at the beginning I looked at it and I was like, that's bad. But then now I look at it and I'm like, no, that's good because they get the gist of it. I mean, I summarize everything. I go through days of meetings and meetings and I summarize what happened in the meetings. I summarize the bottom line. But I don't get them to go through the process of anticipation and disappointment. They get the end result. They don't necessarily know that I was really looking forward to meeting with someone today and he canceled last minute, or he was really a jerk and didn't really help me on the call. They don't go through all of the anticipation process that I go through. They get the end of it. And so they do get disappointed sometimes because if I'm raising money and they know I talked to an investor and we're not getting money, they know we're disappointed, but they don't hear all of the negative feedback I get along the way. I really try to minimize it as much as possible because, in my opinion, as the CEO, I have to be like the armor up front. So I should deal with a lot of criticism, and my co-founders need to hear only the relevant criticism. They only need to hear what would help them build a better product. So that's sort of how we deal with it. But I'm still learning the curve. It takes time.
And so it's, I can't even tell you how much I relate to like the in the beginning everything's together and everyone knows everything, and then at some point you realize that you each have different roles, and the CEO role really is more about getting that reaction from people
Yeah.
and deciding which information and in what way it
Yeah,
passes.
definitely. And I think as a CEO, that's where this fake it till you make it really kicks in because you suddenly feel like you have this a lot of information in your hands. You're not sure when to give it, how to give it, whether all of it should be told to your co-founders. And it takes time. It really takes time, and it really takes trust from your co-founders because it means they trust you that you're promoting the company in the best way possible.
Amazing. And how do you personally deal with it, like with the rejection, with the constant changes?
I don't know. I mean, I think, okay, I will say this. At the beginning, we got a lot more rejection than we do now. And I think it's because I enabled myself to learn how to answer to rejections. So I don't necessarily, if even if someone gives me a rejection, I always try to turn it into something useful for myself. Um, the main rejections we get could be from VCs, and VCs usually say, we're not interested in investing at this point. This is too early stage. And usually what I try to do is understand, okay, but when would it be good for you? What were you missing? I always try to learn from the rejections I get. If it seems like there's real potential of learning here, it's always hard. It's like it's such a roller coaster. I can start my day and have a really good meeting and be like, "Oh my god, we're on top of the world." And then 30 minutes later, I'll be like, "Wow, we're doomed. We're fooling everyone. We have nothing. I don't know what I'm doing." It's like it's on a daily, it's on an hourly basis. We're going up and down, up and down. It's not even a daily basis. I don't know how I'm dealing with it. Sometimes I deal with it better. Sometimes I deal with it worse. It really depends on the day.
That's a very honest and very good answer. That's good. Amazing. How did your family, like friends, family, react to this decision of, okay, I'm not gonna go the regular route that I thought that I'm gonna go, which is the doctor, but I'm gonna do something new, something a bit more risky in a way. How did your environment react to that?
That's a good question because I never came out and said this is what I'm doing. Like none of us did. We never stopped and said this is what we're doing. We started doing it along the way. So like and we never came out and told everyone at once this is what we're doing. So it's like as long as like time passed and as it did, this person knew, my mom knew, my dad knew. Um, so I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure what they think about it. I think now that some publications came about us, so people suddenly know about us more stuff. I think everyone is excited. I think it's weird for people to hear about it from us. I think in general, less women tend to take risks, and so, and it's specifically women that are at the end of their 20s, beginning of 30s, we are more expected of thinking about families at this time. So it's weird to people to see that we're suddenly taking risks and doing something out of the ordinary. But to us, because we never leaped. It's like we swam and suddenly sunk deeper and deeper. It never felt like such a big jump. It's like I don't know, it was a slow process for us. I mean, from outside it did not look like a slow process, but for us it was. I think most of my family supports it. I think people think it's cool. I think.
I hope. I think that once there's like a bit of, when you become someone that people know more, I'm assuming that for you, when you got the 30 under 30, right? So suddenly everyone's super proud, and
Yeah,
it's a moment that like it's very exciting, and the journey there can be very different for different people. Like some people get a lot of support, some people have people even like telling them not to do it, and having people like what you said about that physician that was so hard for you, people
yeah,
getting that from their closer circles.
yeah.
And then it's super interesting to see like how different people react to that, like how it motivates some people, takes some people a lot of mental energy.
Definitely. And I will say this after the Forbes 30 under 30 came out, the three of us come from such three different circles. And it's funny because each of these circles reacted completely differently. I think in the engineering community, many of them work as like in startups, in companies. Many of them really are related to the entrepreneurship world. So they were super, super excited. In the medical community, as I was walking in the hospital, people were staring at me, but they weren't sure what's going on. They were like, "Are we
Huh.
supposed to support you? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing?" They weren't really sure what this is about. So I got all sorts of weird smarks and remarks, specifically from like senior physicians, which I mostly ignored. But yeah, so it's completely different depending on the circle you're in.
Amazing. Is there something like a challenge that you had to face only because you are an entrepreneur?
Um, I don't think it's because I was an entrepreneur. I think as a women entrepreneur, I think that really impacted a lot of the steps along the way. And I only knew that once I got friends that are entrepreneurs, and all of them are male. I only have like one or two friends that are female that are entrepreneurs. Um, when I suddenly saw their experiences, I suddenly noticed how I was treated completely differently, and all sorts of steps that I had to go through, they didn't. So yeah.
Interesting. How do you see that difference between the way men entrepreneur and women entrepreneur move in this field?
I think it's not about how they move, it's about what the environment tells them to do. I think for men, when a woman walks, and it's something I only know now. So when I sit with an investor, I have to be way more impressive than the average man does. And I would get asked a lot of questions. And when I step into that room and sit in that chair in front of him, even if he's the most feminist, he has a lot of misconception in his head that I have to burst, as opposed to a man that doesn't. So that puts me in a different place because I would have to be way more prepared for a meeting and I would be asked a lot more questions. I think for us as a trio of co-founders that are female, and by the way, we never aimed to be 100% female, it just happened to be that way. I think CEOs is like it's become this trend like of having a female CEO. But then once they ask me who built the technology, it takes a lot of belief from the investors to believe that it's two young women that built the technology. For them, it's weird. They're like, but which engineer built this? Whose idea was it? It's kind of weird to them to understand that it's three women that are young that are coming up with this. Whereas to me, it's like it makes a lot of sense that three young women came up with this because it's a product we would use. So it makes a lot of sense to me that three women would come up with it because we're our own clients. Um, so yeah, I think it's a trust thing. I think seeing three young women is not appealing to investors as opposed to seeing three young men where to an investor, that's like, right, that's like the golden ticket. Seeing three young men with technological backgrounds, that's like a no-brainer. But seeing three young women with technological backgrounds somehow doesn't resonate the same way with VCs, and I can't figure out why. I don't know why.
Interesting. I would I would assume people like relating to people who they feel a certain like, wow, that was me
Yeah,
once. And just because there's like one of the reasons, and there are many, many others, but one of the reasons is like most of these investors and VCs are led by mostly men,
yeah.
and they just it's interesting. Cool.
It's definitely interesting, and I will say this: we had some really funny comments given to us,
Ooh,
and
tell
we had
us.
to deal with really funny situations in that way. And that's something I should have told before. You said, "What's the weirdest thing we did to close a deal?" And that's funny. So my co-founder had her baby, the first baby,
Congratulations.
and we had no one to watch the baby, and the baby was like 2 weeks old, and we were about to close our first investment deal, and the investor wanted to meet with the team. That's after they met with me several times. They wanted to meet the team, and they wanted to meet in person, and we didn't have anyone to watch the baby, and so we just came with the baby, and we were sitting there with the investor and the baby was like tiny, so she was holding it like in this kangaroo thing where it's like wrapped around you. We were just sitting there with the baby, the three of us. We were like suddenly four co-founders. Um, so that was definitely an experience. By the way, they invested, so it didn't scare them. But
Wow, were you not scared?
you know what's funny? I did it like automatically. I didn't even give it a thought. Like Shani told me she has no one to watch the baby, and I was like, bring her with you. Like I didn't even pay any attention to it. In retrospect, after the meeting, people were like, "Are you crazy? You went to a meeting with investors with a baby?" And I was like, "Yeah. What else were we supposed to do?" I didn't even think about it. Like I didn't even think it would be wrong. So yeah, so we definitely did that, and then we had all sorts of funny comments from investors. They were like, "But if you are all women, who will stay and lead the company when you all raise your families?" And we always get asked if we are open to meet with someone. They were like, I have a son. Would you like me to matchmake you guys?" So they're always looking to see if I have a ring on my finger. So all sorts of really
Wow,
weird situations that we just made them laughable. It's like we always laugh at them. We always try to smooth the ride. But yeah, funny things.
that's amazing. No, it's great. I think your attitude about it is also super cool. Like, yeah, weird things happen, but like that's cool. It's
Yeah,
fun.
that's how it happens. We're open to it. Keep them coming.
Amazing. Do your co-founders, by the way, feel the same?
I think so. And I also think because they haven't been to most of these meetings, they haven't been experiencing most of these things. Like,
Mm,
mostly I experience them. And sometimes I give them these funny anecdotes, but they don't necessarily get exposed to that as much as I do, which
got
is
it.
also good. Talking about the filter, I think it's good. I think it's good that only the CEOs meet with some of these struggles.
Cool. Do you think the startup affected relationships in your life that existed before, like the way you see people or yourself?
Wow, that's a good question. I think before I was a founder, I didn't have work friends, meaning friends that are only useful for advice on business. And now I do. Now it's like I have this circle of people that don't necessarily know what happens on my personal life, but we talk all the time because we help each other out with work, which is funny because we don't work at the same company, but we always advise each other. So I think it created a new type of relationship in my life that I didn't have before. I don't think it had any impact on my current relationships, like on my friends and family. I don't think so, but maybe that's something I'll know only like in 10 years from now.
Cool. Good answer. Do you think it affected yourself, like the way that you act, think, feel? Like, how did this journey shape you?
I think it demanded a lot of creating fake confidence because at the end, and it's mostly the founders and mainly the CEO at the beginning, like you don't have a product to put. So the face of the company is actually the face of the CEO. People know Feminai, it's oh that's Karny's startup. So people know my face. And I think that's something that takes a lot of getting used to. For instance, for me, I get super embarrassed posing for pictures. And then suddenly having to have this LinkedIn account and constantly posting pictures of myself, putting myself out there, putting my thoughts pen to paper and then publishing it. It's kind of weird to me. So I think I was not aware of it, but I am going through this like process with myself where I have to accept myself more and be more willing to share my thoughts with the world. It's something I was not used to doing before. And people looking at me, inviting me to talk to people, I think that's weird for me. People inviting me to give advice. That's weird to me because I'm like, why would I give advice to anyone? I don't know anything. What can I teach anyone? So I think it's been a process with myself, and I think I'm slowly changing the way I look at myself. Being comfortable calling myself a founder, I think, is a process itself. So yeah,
Amazing. By the way, we skipped that because you referred to it on by yourself, but I have a question here, like in my list of questions of when did you start calling yourself a founder and how did it feel? And the fact that you brought it up when it's like it's something that I always get people a little like it's emotional because it's such a big word that means endless different things, and some people are super easy with it and some people are super harsh, and that's not and that is. And it's so interesting that that's like in your scope of the way you see yourself and how you are. I really do believe that, and I'm sure you also see that when you refer to yourself as something, you become more that thing.
yeah,
So it's like
definitely. I couldn't agree more. It's like the more I saw my name and the word founder next to it, the more I started to believe it. Like the more I had to go to these events and present myself as Karny, co-founder of, I suddenly started believing the words that were coming out of my mouth. Definitely. It has to happen. I will say, I think for my co founders, they really felt comfortable with the word founder after we got our first money. And I think that's true for many founders. I think once they get that validation in the form of a check, I think that really helps people understand okay, I'm not just kidding around. I'm a founder. I have an investor, therefore, I'm a founder. I think it really helps people. I will say for me, that's not what changed it. I think it took me longer.
interesting. What do
Yeah.
you think is one trait that you had that really helped you in this journey?
I don't know. I think feeling comfortable presenting and talking really, really helps at the beginning. Because at the beginning, that's all you do. Basically, you create a presentation and just present it. So I think liking to teach, I had a lot of experience teaching, really, really helped me at that point. Um, and I will say it's not a trait, it's a skill. But the fact that that I'm a doctor really, really helps us as a health tech startup because it validates what I'm saying. The minute no, when I talk to an investor, he knows I'm a doctor, I'm a medical doctor. He automatically believes me more than he would have if I was just a founder.
Cool.
I think the
Great.
combination of these two.
Amazing. I have two last questions. One, what is one skill you wish you had, but it's like it's not on your urgent to learn stuff, but it's like something you wish you had?
I wish I had more background in economy, in business. It's not. I wouldn't run to do an MBA right now. But and it's something I have to learn along the way. It's like I always write down words I don't understand, and I go and read about them, see these short YouTube about it. So I think that's something. That's a skill. A trait would be feeling more comfortable presenting something bigger than it actually is. I think many entrepreneurs at the beginning are met with this thing where you have to stand on stage and you have to present your startup, and what usually happens is there's the truth and then there's what you present. And what you present is, with most entrepreneurs, they wouldn't call it a lie. They would call it looking at the truth from a different perspective. And that's something both me and my co-founders are not good at because all of us are scientists. And to us, it's like you either tell the truth that is as it is or you don't. And I think that's something I'm really trying to learn along the way, but it's almost impossible for me.
It's so interesting. I see it all the time where like people have different versions of truth.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it is the truth. You're not saying anything that's not true, but the
Yeah.
way you might be wording or your projections, or I remember when I was so amazed when I was looking, let me think how I tell this story in a concise manner. I was looking at a company that seemed very like legit and already got funded a few times, and I was going through their papers. We were considering working together, and I was looking and I realized, wow, like these numbers that are on the news, like publicly,
Hmm.
it's just something they decided.
Yeah.
It's just the number they said they're going to hit. There is
Yep.
no actual like
Yep.
they just decided that.
Yep.
And it's so interesting
I
to
know
be
the
on.
versions of the narratives. People suddenly talk to me. They're like, you have to present a different narrative when you're talking to a VC. That's something that to me, till this day, I'm not able to do. That's something so weird to me, and people do it. And yeah, I think it's definitely a skill some entrepreneurs need.
I'm sure you have it to some degree, getting to where you go.
I really hope, but who knows?
Okay, cool. And final question: what would you tell yourself of the beginning of the journey?
I will say A, have fun. B, you pick the right co-founders because I didn't know them. So I think I picked the right co-founders. We wouldn't be here today if I didn't. And then C, it's always trust your vision and instinct and pay less attention to what other people are saying about you. Because at the end of the day, you become the expert of what you're doing. So no matter who you'll consult with, even if it's a Harvard professor, if you've been dealing with this specific issue for the last 2 years, you probably know more about it at this point.
Amazing. So a
Yeah.
lot of self trust.
Yep.
That's
Definitely.
that's amazing. Okay, wow. So thank you so much. I feel like this has been so informative, and the questions I asked are a lot of questions that I had throughout my journey, and I'm sure so many people also do because it's one of those things that people don't often talk about, like the little details of how does it even look like when you start something. So I'm really glad that you came on and just like were totally honest and showed the journey, and I so relate to you, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I was happy to be here. And I wish I had something like this to listen to. So thank you so much for creating it.